Hello, my name is Aisha McElroy. I am the executive director of the Black Cowboy Coalition, and I have here with me today a very special guest. His name is Mr. Redic, and we were introduced to Mr. Redic by a video.
Welcome to the country. Welcome to the country.
And when we saw Mr. Redic, we were blown away by his skills, just how he showed up, just his style, the elegance that he and his horse exuded. It was just a beautiful sight to see. So I reached out to his daughter and I said, you know, if you can make this happen, I would love to interview your father. And here we are today. Thank you so much, Mr. Redic, for joining us.
You're quite welcome.
Mr. Redic, tell me a little bit more about yourself. Where are you from?
I'm from a small town north of Memphis, Tennessee called Millington, Tennessee. I grew up here and attended school here in the Millington area, E.A. Harrell School, Woodstock High School, and Millington Central High School, where I graduated from. I became very interested in horses at a very young age, about 9 years old. My great uncles that were sharecroppers worked, and they had farmland, they had horses, cattle, and I was always small enough to be in the way. I had a love for what they did and a knack for watching them do how they did it so very well with so very little. Horses has been something that has always inspired me. They have a sense of intelligence that is beyond a lot of people's understanding. They can relate to you if they trust you. And trust is something that you really have to have in order to gain the relationship and the willingness of a horse to work with you. You can't show fear. Fear is something that they can detect very, very easily. They have a style and a grace about them that is beyond any experience that I have ever had. I started out buying my first horse by cutting yards. I cut enough yards to raise about $700. I had one of my great uncles to take me to find a horse. At 11 years old, I purchased my first horse. Unfortunately, I lost my father when I was 11 years old. And from that particular point, I was exposed to being raised by several of my relatives, as well as my mom. And they took me in directions that kept me out of trouble, and that was around livestock. I watched my relatives train horses for people that had a lot of property and they had a lot of hobbies, and horses was something that they did on a basis, whereas they could travel with the owners. And I learned from them various traits and skills that was really amazing to me.
Who do you think was your greatest teacher?
My greatest teacher had to be a gentleman by the name of Thurl Ladding of Ladding Rodeo Productions out of Robbins and St. Anne's, Illinois. Mr. Ladding took me under his wing along with his family. It was a very unique experience. He introduced me to rodeoing because of the fact that he had a rodeo company himself. Mr. Ladding was a black man out of Robbins and St. Anne, Illinois. Came through Memphis, was looking for someone that would be interested in talking to him about producing a rodeo. Well, that someone contacted my wife, and she contacted me regarding the fact that there was a gentleman coming through town that wanted to talk to somebody about a rodeo. Well, I was one of few guys along among my age that was experienced with rodeoing. Back in the late 70s and the mid 80s, my friend and I left Memphis with 2 Tennessee walking horses on our way to a black rodeo that we had never, ever experienced. The only directions we had was to get on 40, go through Fort Smith, Arkansas, stay on 40 until you get to Highway 75 in Henrietta, Oklahoma. Take a right on 75, go to the second stoplight. There's a Holiday Inn on the left. Ask the people there. That was the very first time that I went to a rodeo, a black rodeo. And from that point, I've been stuck with rodeo. Growing up, I was excited about Westerns. And once I got a horse, I taught myself how to ride. I taught myself how to get a horse's attention. And it became a point to where people thought that I was fairly decent at it. And people used to come and pick me up, didn't have any transportation. I broke horses. I rode bucking horses. I trained horses. I've had some of the toughest rough stock that you could possibly think of, but I had no fear. Actually, if a horse wasn't tough or rank, as we would call it in the cowboy business, if it wasn't the wildest horse, I didn't want to deal with it. I wanted the roughest, toughest horse out there. And that made him become a friend with me. So that's how I got into this business of riding and training and traveling with horses.
So you said you were 11 years old when you purchased your first horse, and you had some family who were also dealing with livestock and horses. In your area, outside of your family, did you see any other individuals dealing with horses?
Very few. I had some good friends that I grew up with. They had a couple of horses that I would go and ride, and we would ride together. If I could name a few, hopefully they wouldn't be objective to it. Calvin Boyd, Ernest Nathaniel, David Terrell. Those are guys that were in the equestrian business because they were in the farming business. All black men.
Wow. Wow.
Also, while doing that timing of riding, I was like junior high school. I would have horses that I could train to compete with others that are not of my race. And it got to the point to where when I showed with them, they stopped me from showing. They told me that I couldn't compete with the other kids of my age. And they said I was too far advanced.
Wow.
So therefore, that even fueled the fire more for me to want to pursue it even deeper and further. I had to compete with the older people, the grown-ups. I lived in a little small town that was a military town. So they had a ranch, they had equestrian facilities, they had everything that it took as far as the equestrian world, our atmosphere. So what I had to do is compete against guys that were in the military at a young age that I was at. It did nothing but make me better.
That is impressive. That's interesting that those competitions, they were held on the military base?
Yes. They had riding facilities, arenas, and all kind of facilities that would accommodate this type of sport.
I never heard of that. That is really interesting.
Yes.
What style do you practice? Is it English, Western, or both?
Well, let me back it up if I might. Very first horse I had was an Appaloosa. All the horses that my friends had were saddle horses, which was a smooth gait, and somewhat the gait that you almost the gait that you saw me riding on the video. Well, in an Appaloosa and a quarter horse, you're in a galloping. And it's more or less like a run or a gallop or trot. I made my Appaloosas and quarter horses be as smooth as some of their saddle horses. So I was the oddball. Mm. They rode smooth. I had a horse that would run, that would cut, that would turn, that would back up. And I made my horse do what their horses did, plus what he could do. So I was pretty good on quarter horses. And as time grew, I had a love to go back to what my great uncles had. And one of the names was the saddle horse and Tennessee walking horses. They trained Tennessee walking horses for a group of wealthy white people. Mm. So as I grew older, I wanted to do something smoother. And that's how I got into riding Tennessee walking horses. And it's an art to it that you have to have good hands. In other words, you've got to be able to make a horse as comfortable while you're on his back as you want to be comfortable sitting in a chair.
And you trained yourself how to do all of this, how to train horses, how to ride horses, all that.
Yes, I did. I had no formal training. I watched older people do it. I had friends that they were fairly decent at doing it, but there was still a tremendous amount of adversity there that we had to overcome. It only made us better.
Was there a situation where you were supposed to be showing the horse and then they wouldn't allow you to show it?
Or... Well, I could talk to you about a lot of situations, even as today. But there have been times that we have gone to shows and we were told that we couldn't show in the class. And, you know, there were people that came to our defense and said that if we couldn't show, they weren't going to show. And they weren't black. So we were kind of on the level of whereas we were breaking the ice for a lot of the guys that are showing now. There was several situations whereas they wouldn't even allow us to come through the gate unless we were working for someone else. So we overcame that. And let me share with you how we did that sometimes. A lot of times when you see blacks, or they call us handlers, at a big show, it's like we're working for someone else that are not black. So what we would do, we would teach white riders how to ride. And even though some of those horses, most of those horses were ours, they never knew who owned the horses. In many cases, we would teach the rider, and the horse already knew us. He knew our voice. As long as that rider would listen to us on the rail, we could tell them how to ride that horse. The horse, in many cases, was respond to your voice. So that's how we overcame a lot of the adversity. Even today that exists, but not as prevalent as it has in the past. The horse that you showed me on, I've shown this horse. I raised him from 17 months old. I went to 3 states. I went to North Carolina to get him when he was 17 months old. I drove all day and all night just to get this particular bloodline and some of the blessed bloodlines in the industry. I was very fortunate to be able to have that bloodline because many blacks couldn't get it. I trained that horse and I started showing over in Arkansas, several cities in Arkansas. While I was training that horse, before we get to the show arena, I stalled him in a small barn, and people would come and watch me work and train my horse. sometimes there would be 15, 20 people just driving up just to see me do what I do. And from that point, it was amazing to them. But that shared with me that people don't know the talents that everybody can have in other areas that they are not exposed to. This particular horse is a 3-time Arkansas State champion. I stayed in the top 5, but I only was judged to get as high as 3rd place. But I put the same horse back in the arena and put a female white on him, and that horse would win every time. So what am I saying? It's more than one way to skin a cat. You can't go into a system by bulking the system. You have to learn the system. And once you learn the system, you excel within the system. That's how you can become victorious over whatever it is in life that you are up against. It always amazed me when we have the same judges. I train the horse, or others like myself train the horses, and we ride the horses, and we never get first place. But we can put someone else on them, and the same horse will win. So that was always a thrill to me to say, okay, we figured the system out. You're not judging the horse, you're judging the rider. I'm in arenas a lot of times that it might be 20 people in a class, 18 people in a class. It may be 2 or 3 black riders. I have a real good friend of mine. I always tell him he's better than I am, but I try to beat him every time we get in the arena together. His name is Ira Sanders. Ira and I have fought a lot of battles in this horse equestrian business. We've traveled a lot of places that we were the only blacks on the showground, and went to some places a lot of other people wouldn't go. But it has gotten to the point now that we have gained a tremendous amount of respect, and especially Ira, because he has opened the doors for a lot of us. We've gone through a lot, but that's who I show with the most. When I was ill, he took care of my horses for me. I'll never forget it.
That's beautiful. So can you explain to the people, because a lot of people don't know what showing horses is. So can you explain exactly what you do when you are showing a horse and just kind of the process around it?
Well, showing a horse entails a lot of training to get prepared first. Depending upon what class you're in, and the class that you saw me in was a padded class, what you call a padded class. If you would just think about back in the days, you may not know or remember when guys used to wear stacked shoes, stacked heels. Those were the old days. Like mind stompers that they would call them. I know you don't know. I can tell by.
No.
What this gait is from a Tennessee walking horse bloodline or breed. It's a horse that a lot of people in the past have not treated very well, but a lot of people that know how to do this well know how to do it in a professional way. We make the horse as comfortable as he possibly can be. The more natural he is, the better he is. The more relaxed he is, the better he is. They're comfortable, they make you comfortable. So it's a lot of training in it, a lot of riding in it, a lot of slowing them down, a lot of making them look proud, feel proud, and be comfortable, and give you a comfortable ride. We try to do it to where we look elegant in it. And you have to have a good posture to make your horse look comfortable and make a judge want to look at you. And that's how I try to do to keep it simple.
How many hours of training would you say go into that? And then what does it take to build that relationship? Because it seems like you have a personal relationship with your horse. You have to have that connection to be able to get that result.
Absolutely. A ton of hours. I mean, this is something that I did when I was training this horse. I worked him every day for a certain period of time, maybe 20 to 30 minutes at a time, and leave him alone, let him be a horse. Next day, I do the same thing, but I work on one thing at a time. And once he gets that down pat, I move him to something else that goes along with the program. You can ride these horses with an English saddle, and that's how I show. English saddle is a saddle that has no horn. And you have to balance yourself basically with your feet and your legs. In the classes that I show, you have to have top hats and tails, more or less. You got to be dressed with a riding suit with long tails. You have to have a top hat. It takes a lot of work, a lot of hands-on, a lot of talking to, a lot of trust between the two to develop the relationship that you want to have with your horse.
So speaking of being so smooth, that is one of the things that just stood out, in that video. Both you and your horse were incredibly smooth. And I saw one of the comments that someone made, and they said, he riding on a 1969 Cadillac Thoroughbred convertible, diamond in the back of a Stallion V12 Mustang Rolls Royce wagon, and much more on a saddle. So how did you feel when you saw that your video went viral?
Well, can I share with you a little bit about that video and my daughters? This is amazing to me. I was showing, at that particular show, there's probably the first show that I have shown this past year. And I had invited those girls to come and see their dad ride. So when they showed up, they called me and they said, Dad, we're here. And little did I know that they were going to video and record this. So they did what they do. I'm in the arena calling on their dad. And I was just actually just doing what I do. So after the show, next few days, my oldest daughter, Brittany, called me and she said, Dad, what are you doing? I said, I'm not doing a lot. And she was laughing. She said, wow, man, you gone viral. I said, what are you talking about? I said, I don't have any virus. She kind of laughed it off. She said, Dad, no, your video. I said, what video? She said, I put it on Instagram, and it's gone crazy. I said, I don't know how to do all of that. She said, well, I'll show you that. I was just doing me out in the arena on my horse. When I ride, that's basically how I ride anyway. That's just me.
You just smooth with it.
Well, I just be me.
Okay. Well, everybody can't be like you, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out here that want to be like you when they grow up.
That's very kind of you saying that. But one of my ultimate goals is to this not be about me. This be about exposing a tradition or a profession that has been taken from Black cowboys for years, and a tradition that our people need to know about. I travel all over 5 or 6, 7 states sometimes, just to let people see that Black cowboys are real. Black trainers are real. And we have some of the best in the business that we ride. It really, truly amazes me and gives me a great thrill to get responses of how people will come to you that don't know you, that they have seen you ride and tell you how well you ride, or how well you perform, or how well your horse performed, because it's not always about the rider, it's about the horse. So that's a thrill. And then I want to expose our people, our kids, to the story of the Black Cowboys. And when they wrote the books, they told the stories. The Black Cowboy was left at home on the range. And like Paul Harvey would say, here's the rest of it. So we want to expose them to let them know that Black Cowboys are real. And we do it in the dirt like everybody else. Some of the greatest Western movies, they didn't give us the title roles, but Black Cowboys was like The Lone Ranger. The Lone Ranger was based upon Bass Reeves, which was a black U.S. Marshal. We've invented some of the sports that rodeo is all about, like what we used to call in the day bulldogging, but they call it something else now, but it was invented by Bill Pickett, who was a black man.
How do you feel when you hear, knowing that you're self-taught and you were raised seeing others in your family raise horses, how do you feel when you hear individuals say that Mexicans trained Black cowboys or whites trained cowboys, or we were working for them and that's how they learned how to ride horses? How do you feel about those narratives?
Well, actually, I know different. The Black Cowboys are the one that did the rough and tough work of breaking horses and riding the cattle ranges and herding cows. But the others, the white cowboys of the old days, they were called cowhands, and they didn't want to be called boys, but they were taught by Black cowboys. This is something that I don't have a problem with. They've got the problem. And what I'm trying to do, along with many others out there, is share with them that we are good or better than any of the others have ever been. And we could do it as good as they can. A lot of it we invented.
That's right.
So I'm just trying to let people in various cities that I go to see that, hey, we can do it, and we can do it well.
That's right. You started a rodeo. Can you tell us a little bit about that and any challenges that you had when developing that? And are you still putting on that rodeo to this day? I'm
glad you asked. I started back in 1990 when meeting as a gentleman that I shared a little bit about you earlier, Mr. Ladding. Mr. Ladding was looking for someone in Memphis, Tennessee that was interested in working to help bring a rodeo, a black rodeo that had a pageantry with it, to an inside facility. Thurl Ladding and Mike Ladding and the Ladding family is out of Robinson, St. Anne's, Illinois. They've been producing local rodeos in the Midwest for many, many years. They had their own livestock. They have their own transportation, their own bulls, their own bucking horses, their own calves. They had a breeding program for bucking horses and bucking bulls. They were some of the first blacks that were affiliated in the IPRA, stock contractors. That is the International Professional Rodeo Association. Mr. Ladding sat on the board of the Professional Rodeo Cowboy Association also. He said that if I was interested to meet him at a certain place. When I got the message, I was excited about it because I had been exposed to rodeoing, and I wanted people here in Memphis and some of the other surrounding states, Mississippi, Arkansas, to experience what I had experienced at the Black Rodeo. I sat down with him. He gave me a blueprint of what he was interested in trying to do and asked me if I would be interested or know of someone that would help us bring a rodeo to Memphis. Well, I was excited. He shared with me what he needed. He needed a facility. I went to work and got an inside facility. This rodeo keep in mind, was going to be planning for February, Black History Month. Well, I had to get sponsors. So I went to work and I got sponsors. Some of the sponsors I got during that time were Coors Brewery. Coors had a beer out called the Silver Bullet. Mr. Ladding had a bull that was a gray Brownie bull, Brahma bull. And we named that bull the Silver Bullet because Coors was one of our primary sponsors. This rodeo was going to be on the inside, had spotlights, had an orchestra. It had scenes of the great stagecoach riding, the cattle drive where cowboys would come in, driving several head of cows to a certain area of the arena. All of this was done with black cowboys and cowgirls. So with that in mind, I had to get sponsors. I got the city of Memphis. I got Coors Brewery. I had Nagley Outdoor Billboards. We had a company that teamed in with us to do 50 billboards across the city and county. We had radio stations that teamed in with us. This was a big deal that no one had ever even envisioned. It all came together. And in 1991, we put on the first Black Rodeo in Memphis, Tennessee, called the Earl Ladding Rodeo Spectacular. And it was a history lesson that made Black people very proud to see their heritage be a part of. In the process of doing that, I took black cowboys, brought them into town a week before the event in February, and we went out to schools. I had them to talk to school kids throughout the city and county of Shelby and Memphis. And these kids, as well as the teachers, some of them had never seen a black cowboy. And some of their remarks was that there are no real black cowboys. They never saw this on TV. From that point, I helped produce the rodeo. I was the focal point person here in Memphis, Tennessee for that rodeo. One thing that we wanted to do, we wanted to be a benefit to a not-for-profit organization. And the organization that I was very fortunate enough to be a benefit to give portions of the proceeds to that organization was the Sickle Cell Foundation. We teamed up with them and we were able to donate for several years portions of the proceeds to the Memphis Regional Sickle Cell Foundation. From that point, we did several cities. In 1991, we did Memphis, we did Chicago. Chicago always kicked it off, I believe. We were at the International Amphitheater. We went to Birmingham, Alabama, Memphis, Tennessee. Mr. Ladding had produced rodeos in Kemper Arena in Kansas. He and his son Mike and family, they did the Stetson's World Toughest Rodeo in Madison Square Gardens. So I traveled with them for several years. And my hat's off to that family that introduced black cowboys and black rodeos throughout this particular part of the country. Not only did they use those cowboys and cowgirls, they competed for $20,000 of prize money. And we had cowgirls and cowboys as far as California to come in and all over the country. So that's what got me into rodeoing, other than when I first started going back in the 80s there's a family, a black family in Omuggy, Oklahoma. They were the first black rodeo, the LeBlanc family. I got a chance to meet a lot of guys that are black cowboys that became professionals and champions in in the sport with professional rodeo. Some of them rode bulls. Some of them were calf ropers. Clarence LeBlanc was a steer wrestler. He was a champion in, I think, IPRA. If I can remember some of those guys, like Murtis Dykeman. Murtis Dykeman was out of Houston, Texas. He rode bulls in the late 60s and the early 70s in PRCA, that's Professional Rodeo Cowboy Association. He was the first black to ever make the finals, opening doors for other black cowboys. And then you had other cowboys like Charlie Sampson. Charlie Sampson was out of Casa Grande, Arizona. I think in 1989, he was the first black world champion to win a title in the PRCA for riding bulls. The very first black was Charlie Sampson. And then you had young guys that came on after him, like Irvin Williams.
We knew this guy was overdue. He has been riding so good in them earlier rounds. It was just a matter of time, as Clive Van Boris used to say, you can't keep a squirrel out of the trees in timber country. And 91 points for Irvin Williams. It's going to make it work. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a history-making day at the Rosemont Horizon on ESPN in Chicago, Illinois.
Irvin was a cowboy out of Tulsa. He qualified for the last 4 years during that time that I was around for the finals and riding bulls also. You know, you have to give these guys credit and recognition because they opened the doors for us. Sylvester Mayfield out of Clovis, New Mexico, was the first black cowboy to qualify for the finals in calf roping. That is an event. That the cowboy would ride his horse, rope a calf, get back on his horse, fastest time wins. And then you have people like Fred Whitfield out of Cypress, Texas. He was crowned the first world champion calf roper in 1991. Those were the days that I was out there riding with some of those guys that became heroes, some of my heroes.
Wow. Could you tell me what advice you would give individuals, young and old, who would like to get into this industry?
First of all, believe in yourself. You've got to be tough enough to overcome adversity. You've got to, first of all, you really need to ask God to give you the faith and the confidence and the courage to be the best in whatever it is you put out to be in this business. Don't quit. Regardless of how tough it gets, it only makes you better. I've been very grateful to be able to see young people, give them advice pertaining to how to start being involved with this. A lot of our kids and people that live in the cities become victims of their environments. They never know what goes on outside of where they are. So get out and explore your dreams. Follow your dreams. And that's what I've done. I followed my dream. And I believe that if anybody could do it, I could do it also. I've met a lot of people along the way that have given me an opportunity. And that's what I want to do, to try to help someone else get into this particular field of business, that have a desire. That's have a strong will to do what your dream is.
Wow, thank you for that. Such encouraging words, and you are such an inspiration. I thank you so much for sharing your story with us today, for inspiring so many, including myself, letting us know not to ever give up, no matter how hard it gets. That's a good reminder for people. I mean, I'm sure people have heard it so many times, but the advice that you gave was invaluable, and I really appreciate you. I want to thank your daughters, your beautiful daughters, Brianna Redic and Brittany Redic, for sharing your story, first of all, and for making this interview happen. And this is really a testimony to individuals who are afraid to share their story. Please do share your story, because you never know who it's going to impact. You never know where it's going to reach. And you just never know what life you can change